I'm your host, Matt Miller, and welcome to Season 2 of You're Still Doing That? If you love the podcast and want to see it continue, go to www.yourstilldoingthat.com and leave a tip. If you have a lifelong passion you'd like to share, come on the show. Go to www.yourstilldoingthat.com and sign up to become a part of the podcast family. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for fun videos to see what's coming up next. On with the show. With me today is Philip Blackett, and the topic for today's podcast is the path to success. Welcome to the show, Philip.
Thanks so much, Matt. Happy to be here with you.
Great. Philip is an author, a consultant, an entrepreneur, and he's worked with companies like FedEx, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Chick-fil-A. Philip graduated from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, with a degree in political science and economics. He's got an MBA from a little unknown college called Harvard, and he's got a Master's of Divinity from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. That's a pretty impressive resume there, Philip, that you've got going so far.
Thanks so much, Matt. And all in the first 40 years of my life, I say.
Yeah, the first 40 years. All right. So at least academically, you've had all kinds of success and in the business world. So let's kind of get people going to see how something like that happens. So let's start with, where were you born and where did you grow up?
So yeah, I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. Southern guy at heart.
Yep.
And so for me, it was, born to, single mother. Well, my mom was married at the time, but they later divorced. Had a younger sister and had grandparents and an aunt as far as extended family in the city. But basically, the single mother part came in where it's just basically I didn't have my father present really much in my childhood. So that was something I had to quote unquote overcome as far as like
Right.
understanding what it meant to be a young man. And I think my grandfather was very instrumental to step in, even though he could have retired.
Yeah.
He definitely saw like an opportunity to really instill some knowledge for me growing up and help out his daughter at the time.
Yeah.
And so I think from there, like, everything that my family had done to help fill that void and to help provide for my mom and my sister and myself, the biggest way of me feeling like I could pay them back, so to speak, was not necessarily, getting a job at 14. My
Right.
job was just to excel academically.
Right.
And I
Was to
think,
succeed.
right. And so I
Yeah.
think for me, like that was like, I remember my grandmother was saying to me, like the best way for me to really pay it forward for them or show that, you appreciate whatever sacrifices they were making was, do you do your very best in the classroom?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that really struck a nerve for me, probably about seventh, eighth grade for sure,
Yeah.
where basically I was just kind of like somebody that was just kind of in the middle of the pack, academically speaking.
Yeah.
I got some motivation and all of a sudden became valedictorian in my eighth grade class.
Wow.
And I think from there, it just kind of snowballed, so to speak,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
okay, like once you're starting to be successful in this realm, let's see how far we can take it.
That's right. That's right. Both my daughters are in college right now, and one of them's like, "Man, I'll be glad when college is out. I'm ready to get out there and get going." And I was telling her, "No, you're going to stay in college and rack up as many degrees as you can get. I'm telling you, you're going to want all that paperwork. So when you do get out, then doors are going to open much more easily."
Yeah, yeah. There's
Yeah.
there's no rush to
Yeah.
rush a 4-year process in college.
Mm-mm. I
You'll
say
be
get
an
as many.
adult for the rest of your life afterwards. No need
And
to rush the good times.
I was like, "Oh, we're going to be in debt regardless." I was like, "Man, just keep getting degrees and degrees, as many as you can before you get out.
Hmm.
You got all the time." All right. So growing up in Memphis, so how did you get to North Carolina?
So when I was in high school, I had my heart set honestly on Harvard as
Right.
like my go-to school. Um, and so senior year, like fast forward 4 years from eighth grade, like that's where I applied. I got in. I pretty much was set after I screamed and made a fool of myself in the hallway after hearing I got
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
accepted, that this is where I was going. And probably about a few days later, my college counselor brought me into her office and said, "Hey, we're able to like nominate people for this scholarship program at the University of North Carolina. It's our first year being able to do so, and we'd like to nominate you."
Right.
And so for me, I wasn't like a pimpled, freckled nose young in there, but some sort of immature high school senior at the
Yeah.
time, very much like smelling myself and that sort,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. I just want you to know I'm going to Harvard regardless. But if you want to use that spot for me, I
Right.
mean,
Right.
I guess it couldn't hurt." Um, but that was like before I actually went through the process. When I went through the process and I applied, then I interviewed, and then I passed in my finals round, got to final round interviews. I flew down to Chapel Hill. I got to see the campus, got to see a
Yeah.
basketball game, got to see some of the students.
Yep.
Now it was just like, man, I was like, this wasn't the open and shut decision I was
Right.
thinking it was going to be.
Right.
So lo and behold, when they offered me the scholarship, basically a full tuition, full ride, room and board,
Right. The Moorhead,
computers,
right?
Moorhead, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Um, everything's covered. My
Yep.
mom wouldn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we were going to have a conversation after
Yeah.
I got the scholarship. And so I'd be remiss in saying that there weren't necessarily like tears shed during that conversation,
Yeah.
more so from her than me. But I think the big thing was just like, look, we were hell bent, for lack of a better word, or heel bent, I should say, to go to Harvard. As far as us two, I would go, but she would move heaven and earth to make it happen. But I said, listen, like I know that our hearts were set at Harvard. We were blessed with this wonderful opportunity here to go to North Carolina with the scholarship. Um, if you allow me to take advantage of that and make the best out of that, my promise to you is I'll do my very best after I graduate from there to find my way back to Harvard, but for
Right.
business school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was a promise I made to my mom back when I was 18.
Yeah. You can't turn down a full ride. It's a little bit of a no-brainer to get there too.
Which now as a parent, I have a greater appreciation for
Yes.
those type of opportunities whenever they come by.
Yep. So yeah, congrats on that Moorhead scholarship. Those are not easy to come by. That's
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Long process. Um, so you finished Chapel Hill. Did you go to Harvard directly, or did you go to seminary next?
Actually, neither. I went to work.
Neither. Went to work. There you go.
I went in particular to New York City and worked on Wall Street for a couple of years at Goldman Sachs. I had done a summer internship there the summer before my senior year. Got a good sense of what investments was like, more from the credit side versus stocks.
Yeah.
And so I was invited back full time. Definitely happy to do so. Um, yeah, it was a number of years before I went back to business school. I think so. If I graduated from college like 2007, I started business school 2014. So yeah, there was a 7 year
Right.
span in between where I was working at a number of different companies, getting some work experience, going through adulting.
Right. Yep.
That's as far as
Yep.
concerned. Enjoying what it means to be in the real world after college. And at some point, I said to myself, hey, like if I want to get to another level with
Yeah.
regards to like progress in my career, I should probably go back to school. And in
Yeah.
particular, let's see if we can make good on that goal and that promise I had 7+ years
Right.
ago.
Right.
You know,
Yep. Yep. Yeah. A lot of people going back to school for sure to get those extra credentials. So what led you to divinity school?
so seminary was around that time during COVID.
Gotcha.
And I think that was a time for a lot of people. Mortality was coming up front for a lot of people as far as like, how precious life is,
Yep.
thinking about what happens afterwards. And I think for me, a big question was just, as far as my faith as a Christian, just understanding, okay, is there a greater purpose for me outside of just running a business, which at the time I was, running a business I had bought that focused on managing and operating cemeteries.
Right.
And so I was basically surrounding my life every day, eating, sleeping, breathing,
Right. The final outcome.
the final outcome, like
Yeah.
funerals, it was either I was processing or doing operations from the desk of my office regarding burials and funerals and that sort, or I was actually literally on the cemetery grounds, like cutting grass or helping lower caskets down
Yeah.
and backfilling them and that sort. So I think for me, it's just like just a different perspective of like, you're hitting death in the face or seeing it face to face, eye to
Yeah.
eye, almost on a daily basis. And I think for me during that time during COVID, I think I was really grappling with trying to understand, like, is this all there is for my life or is there something
Yeah.
more? And I think especially when I was going through some tough times with the business, that's what opened me to say, hey, I need to figure out, more of what's going on, where I can see my life going forward from this. And I think a big inspiration for me was the late Reverend Billy Graham, which
Right.
for me, he's basically is a legend, not just nationally, but definitely in the North Carolina area.
Yeah.
Was a huge inspiration, role model for me. And I think ever since I took a trip down to Charlotte to visit his home and the Billy Graham Museum down there, that never left my mind as far as like what that would look like as far as potentially preaching.
Yeah.
And so that's what prompted me to say, hey, let's just take a first step. Let's see where this is going. Let's enroll in seminary and see how that plays out and get our master's of divinity degree over there.
My dad is a minister, and he's Presbyterian minister. So, and he
Mm-hmm.
went back later in life as well, like you. So I was, for the most part, an adult when he went through that whole process too. So I got a lot of idea of what you were going through and what all that looks like. Uh, I remember the first time he ever preached at our little country church. It was before seminary, but he was trying it out, to see if
Mm-hmm.
this was his thing. And he finished real early. It was like 11:45 or something. It was like the first one. And I'm in high school, I think, at the time. And so we're standing outside the church door shaking hands, as people come out. And one of the old timers that came into the church was at church, and he says, "Wonderful job today, Keith." He goes, "You stood up, you spoke up, and you shut up." I was like, I'll remember that forever. I was like, that's the key to doing great at any speech. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, stand up, speak up, and shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Super funny. All right, so let's talk about how some of your success happened. So you get a degree, you get out of Carolina, and you get into Wall Street and Goldman Sachs. What were some of the ways that made you successful going into that adulting world first coming out?
Well, I think what comes off top of mind for me, Matt, is understanding, a job is a lot different from college.
Yes.
And so you're not necessarily doing papers to turn in by a certain deadline. You're not trying to balance quote unquote extracurriculars the night
Yep.
before for cram sessions, for big tests and exams and quizzes and that sort. This is like you got to develop some consistency about yourself. You got to have some dedication. You have to be able to say, "Hey, listen, I'm the new guy in
Yeah.
the office. It's not important for me to just um, do my job and just keep it at that. Like I'm part of a team.
Yeah.
So there's a whole sense of relationship building that for me coming out of college, I usually would do on a more social setting rather than a professional setting in the office, near the water cooler and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's just kind of understanding like a couple of things. One, the actual work itself, like the learning curve you're grasping and climbing to learn. So you're not holding your team back, you're actually moving them forward. And the quicker you can get to that point, the better. And then the other aspect of it is building relationships with those who you're working with. So are
Yeah.
you a person that works well and plays well in the sandbox with others,
Yeah.
right? Something that may seem elementary at the time now comes back in full circle. It's like you're now working with people that probably are older than you, more experienced than you, more senior than you.
Yep.
And so how you best go about that too, because it's not enough just to deliver great work. If you're being a jerk about it, they'll probably find somewhere else for you to go.
That's right. Or find somebody to promote over you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my daughter and I picked her up. She works at the illustrious Golden Corral
Mm-hmm.
here in our town. I'm not sure if you're aware of that chain restaurant.
Of
Uh,
course.
but she works up front, and I picked her up, and she was late. She's supposed to get off at 1. She comes out at 1:30, and I was like, I got a podcast with a fella here pretty quickly, so we got to get rolling. But anyway, a couple people had gone sick, and so that made her later getting out. She was
Mm-hmm.
covering, and she was complaining about one of the girls that were there too, and just how she interacts with everyone else. And I was like, I told her, I said, just keep in mind, everything you're learning here at this job and you're learning at college, to remember those lessons as you go through.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully people will like you enough to move you forward. And so
And
you're right on the spot there.
the other key thing about it too, Matt, I realize now in retrospect is, we live in an age now where more than likely where you first work is likely not going to be your last place to work.
Correct.
And
That's
so
true.
you're thinking about this in terms of building a skill set that may be transferable if you do move on to another opportunity, another company, another job.
Yeah.
You also understand that reputation is very important. So sometimes your reputation can precede you. So if you are building bridges rather than burning them, then over the course of the next job opportunity or promotion or career trajectory you embark on, you're getting that whole blend of, can you do the job well? What hard skills do you have to bring to the table? And then what are your soft skills as well?
Yeah.
And, are you the type of person that people can enjoy working with 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Or if it's going to be a pain. And
Yeah.
so it's best to be, excelling at both ends when it comes to not only doing your job well, but also being a good person to do your job with.
Yes. Soft skills and hard skills. I don't know if I've heard it worded that way, but I like it. Definitely. I'll have to use that. I'm a public school teacher, so if a principal is talking to me about something she wants better, and I'm like, well, I'll be working on those soft skills. I got them. I like it, the terminology. So this leads us right into your writing. You're an author of several books. And one of them is, is your book that you've written is called Disagree Without Disrespect. And talking about how you interact with others. So what made you decide that was something you wanted to write a book on?
So it gets right to soft skills, Matt. I
Yep.
think that, we live in a world nowadays that we think that, the best way we can communicate to people is via text message or
Yes.
by commenting on a post, or more likely liking somebody's post on Facebook, Instagram, or somewhere else on social media. We're not in a place where we're really talking to people.
Yeah.
Even in this format we're doing here, not many people do that on an ongoing basis. But more importantly, not only just talking, you can have small talk anywhere. But when
Right.
you actually get into something more like substantive, more like substance based, like below the surface, you're more than likely going to come across people that you don't agree with on everything.
Right.
And so the question then becomes, how do you navigate disagreement in a way where you can still be friendly, you can still be respectful, and you can still build a relationship, whether it's a relationship within your family, maybe your significant other, or maybe a colleague at work. And so this was something that, stemmed from an experience that happened with me and my family 4th of July last year, where essentially I was with my sister. She brought her family to my house. I had my family. My mom came to visit us as well. My sister and I were talking about a topic that, quite frankly, I don't remember what it was actually. I just knew that we were on opposite ends of the spectrum on
Right.
that particular issue. And I didn't see it as necessarily a troublesome situation to be in. I thought it was more so an opportunity for us to learn more about each other.
Right.
My mom thought otherwise. She wanted to be the referee to step in and say, hey, time out. Let's not get involved with this because it is the 4th of July here, and I don't want to see fireworks
Yeah.
before the actual fireworks
Yeah.
here. So I think, like, the intent was fine, was understandable. The impact for me, though, was more so like I felt like I was at a loss
Right.
because I don't see my sister often, and
Yeah.
for us to get into some sort of more um, serious conversation as grown folks and really get to understand one another on a deeper level, felt like that opportunity was lost because of concern or fear that we wouldn't know how to handle ourselves if we found out we disagreed on an issue.
Right.
And so that's what really got me to say, hey, if I'm experiencing this, how many other people are probably experiencing this, whether during 4th of July's, family reunions, or just everyday life, working with people that, God forbid, you don't
Right.
agree on everything with. So I was like, let me put this to paper. And that's what came out of this book, Disagree Without Disrespect, How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You.
Right. I give those lessons to fifth graders all the time. They do not absolutely have any idea how to be disagreeable with each other and not be disrespectful at the same time. It's like
Mm-hmm.
they put the two together. If you don't like what someone said, then I'm going to disrespect you personally about it. I mean, they go right to it. So I have those conversations a lot
Yeah, because
with
it's
them.
a lot of it comes out from the sense, and I blame social media for part of
Yeah.
this.
Oh,
Maybe a
100%.
significant part
Yes.
of this
Yeah.
is this whole notion that, hey, you know, um, my respect and love for you, Matt, is based on or is contingent on whether or not you agree with me. And
Right.
if you don't agree with me, then you are hating on me or you dislike me. And that can't be further from the truth because, I'm talking to another father here, father to father. My question to you, Matt, is hey, do you love your children?
Yeah, of course.
Do you agree with everything your children do or say?
Absolutely not.
Does the fact that you disagree with them, does that take away your
Uh,
love for them?
no, I never will. No.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
And how we can help spread that message to people. If we can do
Right.
that father to child, you can do that in just about any relationship. It's the same concept.
Yeah. Yeah. You're totally right about the internet and no accountability. And we can just say whatever because it's in pretend land. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, unless you happen to be the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, that's a whole nother story, Matt. We can
Oh
go
my
into that
goodness.
one if you like, but yeah, that's
Well,
that's kind of where it goes.
I was
Someone says
like,
something that people disagree with, and
right.
you
Right.
got
It's
both ends of the
usually,
spectrum.
yep, it usually doesn't matter what you say online for the most part, but then occasionally everybody hears what you said.
Well, and that's the thing too, Matt. Not getting fully or more into it than I need to, but just if you had a conversation with your fifth graders, for example, and you targeted your message to fifth graders, and
Right.
somehow somebody got a recording of that and shared it on social media and said, "Look what Matt talked about with his fifth grade kids." And there was one or two things that, despite the whole context of what you said,
Right.
you spoke for 20 minutes and they focus on 30 seconds
Yep.
of what you said and blew it
Yep.
up on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And all of a sudden, you're a bad guy teaching our kids,
Yep.
but they have no idea as far as what was going on through the entirety of your speech, let alone people can be respectful and disagree with you and not try to call for your job.
Right. Yep. Yep. Or, well, I could go on a lot about education, but that'll just be a whole nother podcast. I, I had a friend that asked if I was going to do an education version of podcasting. And I was like, not while I'm employed. I'm not. I might do it after I retire.
I understand that.
Yep.
Yep.
After I retire.
Yep.
Um, so, um, let's, I'm going to move along here. We covered so much of stuff I had written down here to cover with you. Um, yeah, so, is it possible for someone to have conflicting ideas and try not to persuade them one way or the other?
Of course.
Yeah, I was thinking that's issue we have today is people want to always persuade someone to go to one side of something or the other side when it's fine, whatever side they're on, even if you don't agree with it, they can still have that opposite opinion. But
Hmm.
I think it's difficult for people just to be comfortable that someone else thinks differently than they do.
Yeah, I think part of it, Matt, it makes me think of a quote that Dale Carnegie said in, I think his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. A book I wish every student would read before they graduate from high school or college, for that
Right?
matter, because that's a soft skill.
Yeah.
Winning friends and influence people, I think a lot of people will be well suited to learn how to do. He mentioned something, to paraphrase, that basically, a man, conflicted against his will is still of the same mind still, meaning that when we think about persuasion, trying to help somebody go from like one point of view to another, if you try to force somebody's will on that one, try to
Yeah.
shame them, guilt them, pressure them, threaten them, to see things the way you see it, they may comply in the temporary, in the short term, but inside, what you can't
Yeah.
see, they're not with you. And the
No.
sooner they can, you know bolt from where you are, and they're not in front of you, they'll choose a different outcome that's more of what they're doing. And the problem is here, our way of thinking, we're persuading people, we're horrible persuaders.
Yeah.
It just, calling people outside of their names is not a great way to persuade them,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Pressuring them and putting them in awkward positions on social media, is not an easy or good way for you to persuade someone to see things your point of view. So I think, the art, so to speak, of persuasion and debate and influencing someone respectfully to understand your point of view and why it's helpful for them to consider, adopting your point of view, is quite honestly a lost art for sure in our society.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. In college, I took a public speaking class was like a requirement. And part of the lessons in there was you had to give two persuasive speeches trying to persuade people one way or the other. And I always thought that was fun. I never had much of a problem speaking in front of people if I had to. But my two things I persuade, you can tell my youth. I worked at a video store way back in the day. So I was persuading people to be kind and rewind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Shout
uh,
outs to Blockbuster.
that's right. Yeah, Movie Max is what it was called where I worked
Oh,
at.
okay.
Yeah, it would be good if we could teach some more of those social skills and get away from the testing academic stuff. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, if you could give somebody a few simple key elements to foster success, what would some of those elements be?
So one I would say is get clarity on what success means to you, and understand that that definition of success, it can change over time.
Yeah.
What you think is successful when you're 18 can change when you're 28 or 38.
Yes, that's for sure.
Especially as you work, you're in the real world, you're out of your parents' house, maybe you've met somebody, you've got married, you got a house of your own, you have kids of your own. It's something that moves over time.
Yeah.
Once you get that clarity, understand for yourself, okay, what does it take for you to reach that definition of success? Meaning, what are your goals? Get clarity on that, and be realistic and pragmatic to yourself to say, hey, what is it going to take on a day-to-day basis for me to reach these goals?
Right.
Right. It's one thing to think of what you want to do, but far often people don't really understand the work and the dedication and the sacrifices that are needed for you to get to where you're trying to go.
Yes,
Um,
for
and
sure.
so at that same time, the last thing I would say is whatever your goal is to reach whatever definition of success you have at that particular time, make a strong commitment to yourself that you're going to persist and do what it takes, whether you feel like it today or you don't.
Yes.
If things work out the way you wanted it to work out or they don't, whether people are cheering for you on the sidelines or they're ignoring you.
Yeah.
It's something that honestly, this should be something that's running your race, regardless, because it's important to you and the people you care about, but more importantly, to the person who's going to be doing that work, which
Yeah.
should be you.
That's right. Good advice to give. I'm going to hit you with a couple of lighter, fun questions here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so first, are you currently preaching anywhere?
Not currently. I've done some sermons online
Yeah.
and going through the book of Matthew right now. As far as the sermon series, that I'll pick back up in short order, but not in particular as far as like preaching at a church on a regular basis.
All right. I was going to decide on my next line of questioning. What is your favorite topic to preach on? What's one of your favorite topics to go with?
Uh, Anything that involves Jesus.
Yeah.
In particular, the one that I like the most is when Jesus was washing his disciples' feet, and
Yeah.
how I see that as the perfect paradigm of what leadership is about. Because you
Yeah.
have a man that is, and I won't preach on this one per se, but I'll give you like the 10-second version of it. You have a man that clearly is above every man in that room, that is taking on the lowliest level of service
Yeah.
to honor those men that he knows are sinful. He knows
Yeah.
that they're wrong. They're not right like him, but he serves them because he loves them.
Yeah.
And to me, it's a model that I feel like is missing in our culture and society.
For sure.
And I think it's a great example for us to lean on and say, how can we be more like Jesus, who I say is the perfect leader when it comes to that. And so that's a popular thing I love to preach on.
Yes. When I was in Sunday school way back in the day, our teacher, there was only two of us in that Sunday school class, and I was so nervous because she washed our feet, right? She was teaching that lesson. So we had to take off our shoes and socks and wash our feet. And I was like, oh, this is really awkward because we were like middle school age, it
Mm-hmm.
was like
Mm-hmm.
13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
But that one stuck with me about, the leader that will go and do the lowliest work. So that's one good thing about my kid's job at Golden Corral. There, if one of my daughters is a dishwasher, and part of that job is to clean the bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if the bathroom is just extremely disgusting for whatever reason, the
Mm-hmm.
manager will go in and she'll clean it herself and not make them do it
Mm-hmm.
if it's really bad. And so, I always say that's a good leader right there. She
Mm-hmm.
does good work. Yeah, but doing the lowliest work, even if you're the top of the pole.
Absolutely.
You are correct. Um, if people are looking for your sermons online, where can they go to find them?
So the sermons are on my website, www.beggarsbreakingbread.com. So beggar is,
Beggarsbreakingbread.com.
yep. So beggars as far as BEGGARS, breakingbread.com.
Got you. Yeah, go check that out. You're also a father of twin daughters, twin
Mm-hmm.
girls. That's like I am as too. So I see if there's any similarities. Do you have one of your girls as one the boss and one the follower?
That changes by the day, Matt.
Does it?
It's probably like one that's probably like 51% the boss, and the other
Yeah.
one's like 51% the follower.
Yeah.
But yeah, they tend to switch up on each other. It makes
That's
sense. They're very much
interesting.
alike.
Mine are not identical, and there's one that's very much the leader, and another
Mm-hmm.
one that's very much the worker, and she follows and does a lot of the work.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting there too. Um, what were some of the weirdest questions people asked you about your daughters when they were little and twins? What were some of the weirdest things? Like, I'll tell you, like, for one of ours, my wife and I might be in the grocery store, and they're both like dressed in pink, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh, is one a boy and one a girl?" or something like that would come through, and we're like, "No."
Well, I think one thing was I remember when my girls were born, they had pink hats and blue hats,
Yeah.
and so the identical twins are coming out the same time essentially. Um,
Yes.
if you give them both the same color, it might be
Mm.
difficult, at least at that stage, fresh out the
Right.
womb, to tell the
Yep.
difference. So I remember one of them, the first one that came out, she had a blue hat, and the second one had a pink hat,
Yep. Our
and that was helpful for us to tell the difference.
our, at our hospital, they wrote on the bottom of their feet, they wrote A for the
Hmm.
first kid and B for the second one. But luckily, mine weren't identical, so it didn't take very long whatsoever.
That's
Uh,
good.
they're similar, but there is enough. They're not
Right.
too bad. Um, Also, in doing some research on you, Philip, you do a little bit of work and a little bit of consulting with AI.
Hmm.
So, how would you associate AI and helping you to foster success? How could that be used as a tool?
So I look at AI as essentially similar to what the internet was when it first came out.
Yeah,
Um, when I think about like the typewriter, when I think about the telephone or any major advance in technology we've had historically.
yeah,
One of the main elements, the common elements among all those new technologies helped us become more productive than we were before the technology.
right.
And
That's
so
for
I look
sure.
at AI as very similar, where this is dependent on the tool you use, can help you save on a significant amount of time doing the type of work you might have otherwise had somebody else to do versus yourself, that now allows you to take on more activities to be more
Right,
fruitful, more productive, um, than you would have otherwise. And so I think from a sense of, scaling towards success is more so like now, depending on how diligent you are to understand, here are all the things I need to do to reach my goal. Now you can look at it from the sense of, here are the things that I know I have to do. And here are the things that I can now outsource, not necessarily to somebody else, but I can outsource it to AI and they can get it
right,
done much quicker, probably just as good, if not maybe even better.
right.
So I think from a time savings, that leads to more productivity, which leads you closer to getting your goals that you're trying to reach. That helps you become more likely to be successful.
Right. It does certainly helps me with writing podcast descriptions. That's for sure.
Hmm.
I use it quite frequently. So if people are interested in finding any of your books, where do they go, or your business services? Because you are also an active consultant. Where can they go to find any of those things?
So I would go to Amazon for any of my books.
Yeah.
And then I will go to my website at philipblackett.com.
Gotcha. I see someone in the background. As mine are older, so they don't barge in anymore. But I'm certainly used to those days. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's the older one. That's Sophia.
Oh, there's his say. Hi, Sophia.
You want to wave?
There she is.
All right, go back to mom. Let daddy finish up. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those no privacy days. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah, yeah. And you think you close the door good
Right?
enough that they, as 7-year-olds, they wouldn't be able to barge through, but clearly they're picking up on strength.
Yes, that's for sure. All right, so Phil, we're going to wrap things up. I ask all my folks the same 6 questions each time to see similarities in answers and things like that.
Sure.
So just rapid fire here. What's your favorite smell? Yep. What's one of your favorite smells?
Fresh linen, as in
Fresh
like
linen.
fresh sheets,
Yeah.
fresh towels. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good one. What's your favorite drink?
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper. That's a good one. Cheer wine for me. What is something that you absolutely hate to eat, that you do not like?
um, wow. Eggplant
Yeah, that's not my worst, but that's definitely not something
up
I'm going to
there.
order. Yeah, it's up there. Uh, who's the most famous person you've ever met?
Hmm. That's a good question. I'm kind of going through who could that possibly be as far as most famous. First one that came off to me was R&B singer Alicia Keys.
Oh, that's a good one.
Hmm.
I'm 1 degree from Alicia Keys. A contestant on The Voice is a
Hmm.
hometown local guy here where I'm from, and that was his
Oh,
coach.
oh,
And
nice.
yeah, so he was on The Voice, and that was his coach. So I'm 1 degree from Alicia.
There you go.
If you could go on a dream vacation, what would that look like?
Turks and Caicos with the family, but also have like an option where you can have a day or two, just me and the wife, and then the kids
Yes,
can have their own fun fest, and you just see them for
right.
meals.
Yes, that's a good one. School, put them in school while you're on vacation.
Hmm.
If you could give yourself some advice, your younger self, some advice, what would it be?
Just stay in it. Things will get better if you just stay in it.
Yeah, that's a pretty consistent answer for most people. Patience and stay with it. That's for sure.
Hmm.
Um, what is one of your core memories? Something that you're never, ever, ever gonna forget?
When my twin girls were born.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong one.
Hmm.
That's for sure. Um, oh, Philip, it was really great chatting with you today. I'm going to get you out of here. If anyone is interested on his services, check out his websites. Where can they go again, Philip?
Go to philipblackett.com.
philipblackett.com. You can find everything you need there for financial consults, or check out the what was for the sermons again? What was that website?
beggarsbreakingbread.com.
I love it. There you go. We'll see a Duke fan and a UNC alumni can have a good conversation. It is
Absolutely.
proof. Check out his stuff. Check out his books on Amazon, and he's got a lot of good stuff for you guys to go through. So remember, folks, find out what makes you happy and get to it. There's a lot of life out there to live, so make it a good one. Be nice, be kind, be good, and have a good week. And it was really great talking to you, Philip.
Likewise, Matt. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to You're Still Doing That. If you love the show, check us out on our website, www.yourstilldoingthat.com, and leave a tip. You can also find the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.